Hello and welcome to C-Notes, the podcasting division of the Anti-Money Laundering Training Academy, found at amltrainer.com on your internet dial. This episode of C-Notes is brought to you by Kevin Sullivan, president of the AML Training Academy. Today we'll be speaking with Gregory Dellas on the topic of creating a culture of compliance. This is a very interesting topic, as it seems every time you turn around, there's yet another example of a financial institution getting jammed up due to its lack of appropriate compliance. So today we hope to dive into the refinement and cultivation of a compliance mindset. We have with us Mr. Gregory Dellas. Greg led the AML risk management team at the Bank of Cyprus, where he was responsible for onboarding high-risk clients and evaluating large and complex transactions. Greg is also the founder and the current chair of the ACAMS Cyprus chapter and a trainer of numerous topics for ACAMS. And presently, Greg is the Chief Compliance and Innovation Officer at ECCOMMBX, a flexible fintech platform for multinational interbank transactions. Oh my God, let's just stop right there. Okay. I know Greg's from Cyprus and he speaks Greek, and I feel like I just spoke Greek to you because I have absolutely no idea what I just said. It sounded something like interstellar transportations through the flux capacitor platform. I don't know what I said. So anyway, with that, we'll just have Greg explain the whole thing to you. Let me say hello to my friend, Mr. Gregory Dellas.
Oh, hi, Kevin. It's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I know it's a long way for you. You're what, about 7, 8 hours in front of me here? Because Greg runs the Bank of Cyprus.
Exactly.
Let's get to this whole stuff on culture of compliance. Before we delve into that, just give the audience a little background history on you. So if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and the road that you took to get to the top of the AML industry.
Top of the AML industry? I don't think so, but okay.
He's modest, folks.
So I started my career actually as a private banker. I did that with the Bank of Cyprus, and that was quite a few years ago. And after 10 years in that position, I actually made a move to the second biggest bank of Cyprus as manager of private banking. So my role was actually initially in the front line with customers with high-risk transactions. And that role gradually expanded to help setting up our private banking units in the UK and Romania, building our international wealth management service, but at the same time rethinking our model, but mostly our compliance procedures and policies, setting them up in line with the changes in the European AML directives. And that is actually how I started getting involved with high-risk customer onboarding, PEP profiles. And that led to a proposal to join the compliance team of the bank. And to be honest, my first reaction was, did I do something wrong? Is somebody punishing me? But, to cut the long story short, I was then the MLRO at group level for a period of time and led a number of projects for the bank before it collapsed in 2015. But that was a huge learning experience for me. And after working for a while in the bank's resolution, I joined Bank of Cyprus again, leading the AML compliance risk management team within the international business division. And that's when I talked to ACAMS about setting up the Cyprus chapter here. A few years later, I came back into the front line as director of wealth and markets, again for the Bank of Cyprus, leading a team of wealth managers, private bankers, brokers. And actually, it was a big wake-up call for me coming back into the front line, but with the compliance experience. You think differently, and that's something we'll talk about a bit later. In November of last year, I left the bank after a good 22 years in the banking sector in Cyprus and joined ECCOMMBX as their Chief Compliance and Innovation Officer. It's not as difficult as it sounds. It's not really big. ECCOMMBX is an EMI based out of Cyprus. We specialize in B2B e-account management, so basically cross-border payments, currency conversions, mainly dealing with corporate customers from all over the world who want to use our innovative payments platform. That's ECCOMMBX, to execute their payments, whether inward or outward, easily, quickly, and at a reasonable cost. And in ECCOMMBX, I am responsible for the compliance program, obviously, of the company, but also managing the process of innovation and change management.
So is ECCOMMBX, are we talking fiat currency or is this virtual currency?
No, it's e-money. So it's basically transferring money into somebody's account it's immediately converted into the equivalent amount of electronic money, and then it leaves the platform.
Okay, so we're not talking like the blockchain and
No, it's
centralized
not crypto,
registers.
it's not
Okay.
virtual. No.
Okay.
It's not virtual currency.
So what exactly is an innovation officer?
Okay. So basically an
It
innovation
sounds cool,
officer.
though. I just want to,
again,
man, it sounds like something I do as a kid. I want to be the innovation officer.
It
I
is
be an
a fancy
astronaut.
title.
I want to be an innovation officer.
Actually, it's a job that's becoming more and more popular, and we managed to combine it with compliance. It's somebody in a company that manages the process, as I said, of innovation and change management. But what does that mean? When we talk about innovation, we mean new original ideas on how to serve your customers, how to interact both internally and externally in terms of new strategies, business opportunities, new technologies, right? Which is very relevant to compliance, in an effort to develop new capabilities and new partnerships. An innovation officer will either originate such ideas or identify, which is more common, identify such ideas in the company and put in place the necessary steps and processes to achieve efficiencies, basically. And at the same time, an innovation officer will be the person other people in the company turn to when they need to make a change or changes in systems or processes to ensure that such changes are made quickly, efficiently, and with the required coordination. So with all the changes that happened over the last few years and all the developments in technology and the importance of processes and policies, this is becoming a necessary role in a company.
Today, there are so many more AML regulations than ever before, and they're always changing and developing. How does an institution, or an individual for that matter, cope with the constant changes and show the regulators that all the reasonable procedures have been followed?
I think this is a struggle we all go through. The vast majority of us are striving, daily to do the right thing, to keep the criminals out of our profession, out of the financial institution, out of our economy. And you are right, AML regulations are becoming more complex, more prescriptive, tougher to follow. And that is natural because I guess as criminals are evolving in a faster pace than the rest of us, we somehow, need to keep up, right? There doesn't seem to be a magic formula. And that is where I think the risk-based approach that we hear and love and teach some of us is the most appropriate way forward. As it encourages the ultimate use of resources. Among those resources, you've got technology. And technology is very different today than it used to be a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And indeed, it's great that we can utilize the advantages of technology today to enhance our pool of resources, to enhance our potential, and to become more efficient in how to deal with financial crime. However, we should always keep in the back of our minds that, and this goes out basically to senior management and the board who have the ultimate responsibility, that technology is not yet to the point where it can actually replace humans. Sometimes we think it can. We talk about technology and AI and machine learning, but it's not yet to that point. It cannot think for us, cannot exercise judgment. But what technology can do is that it can leave us with time to think, focusing our attention to the real risks and taking time to exercise judgment and to take decisions.
So it sounds like AI is a means to an end, not just an end in itself then.
It's a means to an end, yeah. You need the people, it cannot take decisions for us. It cannot exercise critical judgment. It cannot decide what's right or wrong. It can guide us to the right direction, but it cannot take the decision for us.
Yeah, I say the same thing about investigations all the time. You just can't take the place of a good detective. There's no way.
Exactly. I think we see that with transaction monitoring as well. You've got all these good systems that, screen the transactions. They help you, perhaps spot some red flags. But there's nothing like the intuition of somebody sitting in the front line and talking to the client and getting the information firsthand.
Right. So with the boards of many banks now requiring the compliance departments to lower the cost, how does an AML director progress with newer fintech tools, continue to use legacy systems, have fewer resources available, and yet still maintain that culture of compliance?
Thanks for this question. I think it's very interesting that there's always pressure to reduce compliance costs, but this is not, the purpose. Really, obviously, we have to be reasonable, but at the same time, if we want to be compliant, and we should want to be compliant, we should, as a board of directors in a company, ensure there are adequate resources to do what we have to do efficiently and effectively. After all, the ultimate responsibilities lie with the board, right? So we should never forget that. The AML director is just one of the important resources a company can use to ensure compliance. Having said that, I definitely do not mean overspending or over budgeting. We need to be reasonable and ensure that the risks are mitigated appropriately. So taking into account our customer base, our products, the way we deliver our products, and also our geographic reach, as well as our size, all of this define our risk as well as our revenues at the end of the day. So we need to be reasonable. Also, you mentioned culture. Culture is not just fancy systems. It's not something you buy. You can have no resources at all, but still have the right culture in the company. And what is right culture? Achieving the right culture means following a number of steps to ensure people finally get the right mindset, something you mentioned earlier. Everyone is striving for the best, striving to be compliant, and you can spend millions and not have that at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Is there a one-size-fits-all formula for compliance success that can work in a casino, in a MSB, at the bank? Is just one way to do it?
There's definitely no one size fits all. Every single company is different, different in terms of size, in terms of age, in terms of products and services it provides, experience, jurisdiction it operates in and serves, who are its customers, who are the counterparties of the customers or the counterparties of the organization itself. All these are things to look at when deciding on the risk appetite of the company, the approach to management and the mitigation of risk, and obviously the success in effectively protecting the organization itself. So there is no one size fits all for sure. And also, there is no right way to go there. There are steps to take, but if you get it wrong, you need to rethink about your strategy and do it again and again until you get it right.
Right. What is a code of conduct policy?
Simply put, obviously, a code of conduct is a set of behaviors distinguishing right from wrong. It's basically how to do the right thing, how to behave, how to act in a corporate environment, how to be, ethical, how to be correct. And it's not just a set of rules one has to follow in front of others or in the presence of others, but it's really how to behave when no one is looking. So a code of conduct policy touches upon things like how to behave with your colleagues, how to behave with customers, how to behave with third parties, what is expected of you, and what to expect from others in a corporate or a work environment. What are unacceptable behaviors, and how can you spot unacceptable behaviors and what you can do about them? It is important to be in compliance with laws and regulations, and how it is important to maintain things like confidentiality, for example. And it touches upon things like accountability and responsibility, which are very important. Even things like dress codes, drug use, sexual harassment, and many other serious issues. So it is a package of stuff.
You mentioned about doing the right thing. How would you describe that? In your word, what is doing the right thing? What would be a simple way to translate it to somebody else, maybe someone newcomer to the bank? How does he know what the right thing is?
I've got quite a few definitions for that, but doing the right thing for me is simply looking at the bigger picture, and take conscious decisions in the right direction. Personally, I believe we all know what doing the right thing means. We know that lying or stealing or cheating is wrong. In the same way, we also know that fraud, crime, money laundering, human trafficking, terrorist financing are wrong. So we have a choice, either doing something about stopping bad or wrong things from happening, or helping criminals to do their thing. Even just simply turning the blind eye and doing nothing is wrong. It's not doing the right thing. So having said all that, doing the right thing sounds simpler than it is. Sometimes in corporate environments, we tend to get excited, and carried away by profits, lucrative sales targets, success stories. And that sometimes makes us lose focus and forget the actual meaning of, what doing the right thing means. It's not really that difficult to refocus. We should always have this at the back of our mind. Is this right for me? Is this right for my company? The company I represent, or is it right for our customers? Do we want to live with crime? Do we want to make it easy for criminals, or do we want to be included among them, which sometimes happens? We've seen a lot of examples of that. No, we don't want to do that. So we should always think about our actions and whether our actions could potentially hurt our efforts to protect our institution, our environment, and potentially our personal career, and the impact that could have on us personally, on our families. If we're working in a financial institution, we always want to help our customers and allow legitimate business to go through, right? And what it asks from us is simply to be vigilant, to pick on those red flags, which will help us potentially identify situations that are wrong, and helping those that can identify those situations to do something about it. And that is doing the right thing in a corporate environment.
You mentioned about your family, and I remember when I first started out in law enforcement, I had an old crusty sergeant that was showing me the ropes, and he said, "Hey, kid, you got to do the right thing." And I said, "What's the right thing?" He said, "The right thing, kid, is if whatever you do, if it makes it to the newspapers or the TV news, when you go home at night, is your kid and your wife going to be proud of you, or they're going to be embarrassed by you? And that's the right
Exactly.
thing." I said, "Well," and that sounds exactly what you just said.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Because
And I
sometimes
never
you think
forgot that.
it
Yeah.
is exactly what you described, And if you look at it from the corporate point of view, if doing something means that your company could end up in the first page of a big newspaper, you don't want that.
You don't want
Even if
that.
it's for all the right reasons. And also I have a belief that if you don't allow crime in your company, there is more space for legitimate business to come through, and people appreciate that.
And sometimes doing the right thing gets you jammed up too.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I know there was a big bank. I'm not going to mention their name, but they were in the paper rather recently, where I think 5,000 of their employees got fired. So that kind of tells you what bank it is right there. And the people that stood up and did the right thing, they were out the door. So sometimes it kind of hurts you immediately, but I think in the end, you're going to benefit from it because it's just to be a policy, you always adapt. Maybe in the short term, it's going to hurt you a little bit, but in the end, it's well worth doing the right thing all the time.
Exactly.
It'll just come back and haunt you if you do the wrong things. All right. I wanted to ask you about the whistleblower policy. Should an institution have a whistleblower policy? And if so, how should you handle that?
I personally believe that a whistleblower policy is really important because it sets the tone in the institution, right? But it's not as important as a clear process and the underlying cultural appetite, which drives people in the company to feel comfortable, to feel safe when expressing their concerns. Obviously, again, a policy sets a tone and displays the importance, but it's true that not everyone in an institution is familiar or comfortable with all the policies. And it's also sadly true that sometimes policies or even processes are just there for the sake of it, just to display compliance when the regulator pays a visit. That is not the purpose. So there should be a clear process. Call it policy, call it rules, call it whatever you want, which clearly outlines the steps one can take to express concerns without the fear of being bullied or being retaliated against. And to me, what is more important is the right tone at the top, which is really, really important here. For people to speak up, they should feel comfortable that when they do, there will be no finger pointing, there will be no negative consequences, and they will be protected and supported by their CEO, by their HR, and by the board. So the policy is important, but not as important as the culture behind the policy or the culture supporting that policy.
That brings up to the next point then. Can an employee who's at the bottom of the food chain, can he affect changes in policy?
That's an interesting question, because we always hear about the tone from the top, right? And how important it is to have the right tone at the top. But you also use the word chain. And I strongly believe that, everyone in our organization is equally important and equally influential. A right tone at the top and the right push downwards can create the right mood in the middle. That's theory, right? It is a chain reaction. And the right mood in the middle can create the right tone at the bottom of the organization and echo it back up the chain. So whilst formulating policies and processes, it's always important to listen to those involved in the chain. After all, a weak link or a broken link can affect the whole institution. Having said that, people have to mean it, right? So sometimes people get carried away again by financial targets. We talked about this a few minutes ago. They need to show profits, they need to show good results, and compliance comes second in priority. My experience shows that if you're striving to do the right thing, which is no rocket science, everything else comes with it. And everything falls in place, and you get your profits, you get your customers, the customers you want to keep. One struggle I face in my career is, trying to convince management that they need to always think of compliance and follow the rules that are there for a reason. They're not just there to make your life difficult. And I always get two responses. One is, don't we want clients? And the answer to that is, of course we do, but we want the right clients. Anyone else might give you a spike in profits temporarily, but if there's time involved, profit is not sustainable. You're essentially helping criminals, and they'll take you down with them. I think you know that better than I do.
Oh, yeah.
And the other response I get is people doing everything by the book, extreme compliance. To have perfect compliance, you should need to just padlock the company, perfect compliance, but there's no business. We have to treat customers with respect, and that's not hard, following the rules at the same time. We do not treat customers badly. We treat them fairly, with respect. We want clients, but we want the good clients. And all the rules and regulations are there to help us choose those good clients. So going back to your question, yes, a person speaking to a client can either mess it up for us or make it all better. So people at any point in the organization can affect the way we think, and that can affect our culture, our policies, our procedures, the business we do.
Sure. Well, that segues great into this next question then. In the last few years, we've just seen so many major bank scandals. What can be done to prevent them from occurring again?
I don't think there's something specific that we all need to do, to prevent things from happening, other than to strive to create and maintain the right tone, the right culture in a company. Criminals will always be out there, and we'll always be striving to take advantage of our systems, our processes, our weaknesses to launder their money, to carry out their fraud, to perform more crime.
Saying this AML is never going to go away?
So long as there is a crime out there, we'll always have a job, my friends. What do? We really need to keep being vigilant, and try to think quicker than criminals do. And over my years in compliance training, maybe you'll share the same. I've noticed that people do not really understand why they're asked to do stuff. No. A lot of them just think this is all just a bunch of rules, we devised to make their life more difficult and get us a salary at the end of the day. And that's why there is usually resistance to do the right thing. I believe that when you take the time to explain to people why it is important to really understand what we're trying to achieve and help them to practically follow the rules, and use common sense most of the time, as well as the difference every single person's actions can make, people do get passionate and try to do the right thing. I remember I started my career in private banking, right, in the front line. So I know now that I did not understand your stuff back then. Like, why is it important to ask the client the right questions and really understand their business and the source of funds? At some point, I really felt it was none of my business, but it really is. If you understand your customers well, you really end up serving your good customers better. And if despite your efforts, you don't understand something, or if something does not smell good, there's probably something there that's stinking bad and you don't want it in your organization.
So you could have been a cop like me. You got the attitude there. I kind of make it my point when I go out now and do the training, whether it's through ACAMS or whoever, to try to make people understand why we're doing it. Because you nailed it. People don't understand why this is important. Because you don't see money laundering. It's not visual like a fraud. Fraud is easy. You see, hey, someone used my credit card. Someone stole my ID. That's easy to see. You don't see money laundering. It just kind of passes through the bank. In fact, the bank has got no penalty for it. In fact, they make money on launderers. So there's no real effort to want to get rid of it. So if I can point out to people why we're doing this, what it means that when you allow the cartels to get more money, then they're going to sell more drugs. There's a big opioid crisis in the United States right now. A lot of kids are dying from this stuff. They wouldn't be dying if the cartels weren't making money. So if you allow them to make money, they're going to keep pushing the opioids. And you allow them to push it, sooner or later it's going to be your kid that the police are knocking on your door about. When you put it in personal terms, I think they start to understand why we're doing this stuff and all these regulations that they think is crazy. And why are we asking all these questions, onboarding? It's crazy. Why? There's reasons for every one of those things. And once they understand it gets easy for them to do the right thing.
Exactly. And I think there used to be a line. I think things are much better now between the front line and the compliance department. And I believe that people should actually experience both sides. A good compliance officer should actually have spent time in the front line talking to clients, seeing the clients' reactions, and then be able to help people in the front line who have to face customers. It's very difficult to say no to a customer. It's very difficult to ask questions from a customer that you've known for quite a few years. This is hard stuff, right? So a lot of times people in front line, not because they're stupid or anything, but their role is different. They have a different type of job. So you do need to spend the time with them and explain, why am I asking this? And sometimes we people in compliance also get carried away. Before we ask the question, we need to think, what the value is this to us, and understand that people in the front line cannot just go back and forth to the customer 500 times for one specific transaction. Pull it all together, and go to the customer once and help your people in the front line, your friends, your colleagues, ask the right questions, the right amount of questions, and get the right answers, and know why you're asking the questions.
My impossible dream of an idea, to have, people in RM spend 2 weeks work with the AML department every year, and then someone from the AML department work 2 weeks as an RM every year, just to see the other side and what they got to do and the things that they face and unique aspects of it.
A couple of banks in Europe actually did this, and I thought it was a great idea.
So I can't take credit for this idea now, huh?
No, you can't. I'm sorry. But, I've done the full 360. I started as a private banker, which is, a high risk area for AML. And then I went all the way back to compliance, to hardcore AML, and then went back into the front line and then back into the compliance, second line of defense. So you learn so much from doing this. It's unbelievable. Yeah. And people really need to get the experience to understand, each other's side a bit better. Yeah. So there is more cooperation because we are all in this together.
Yep. I was reading up on some things and I came across this one tidbit of information. I just want to share it with you, get your comment. It comes out of the Corporate Executive Board General Counsel Roundtable. And it goes back a few years. It said, on average, $1 spent on compliance saves $5.21 in heightened avoidance of legal liabilities, harm to organization reputation, and lost productivity. That's amazing. When you think that, wow, $1 here saves me almost $5.25 over here. And you think about it now, you think about all the fines that these banks have gotten. And you and I both know it's not just the fine, it's the remediation costs too. It's probably triple what the fine is. So yeah, that seems to make a lot of sense to me. But I don't know if that's just not out there in the financial world. They don't care about it or what?
I think over the years, we've witnessed all this damage, especially in reputation and subsequent financial damage for organizations, whether willingly or unwillingly, they failed in their AML programs. Right, and there are lots of examples out there. There's another thing actually. If you believe compliance is expensive, try non-compliance. I think that was from an ex-deputy attorney in the United States. And we all know that the compliance industry is becoming lucrative in terms of the amount of money and effort that goes into not only just being compliant, but also showing to regulators and other third parties that you are actually indeed compliant. At the end of the day, it's not just the huge fines, right? It's bad reputation that you're helping the bad guys. Yeah. It's all those legal cases, the lawsuits that can haunt you, the talent that does not want to be stigmatized and leaves your company, and the clients you lose, and the consequences are endless. I can talk about this from the point of view of a country. Cyprus was in the spotlight a few years ago. There was a big reputational damage when we asked for help from Europe. Right. That was back in 2012, 2013. And we were connected with quite a few things, or at least the reputation was that we were connected with quite a few things. And I know what damage it did to the country, right? Losing correspondent banking relationships, banks closing down, revenue shrinking. And it takes a lot of effort to get your name back. It is really, really serious. And I agree. I would think actually that the savings would be much more than $5 to a dollar, but
probably more. Yeah, that stat is a few years old, so it's probably more now.
Exactly.
Yeah. I just got a couple more questions. What do you think of the new current and new proposals for management accountability?
There are quite a few things out there. And I do believe that people make organizations, and when the organizations fail, it's usually because of the actions of people, within that organization. And I also believe that accountability and responsibility are key to being conscious when you're taking decisions, and thus being conscious when doing the right thing. So, I personally welcome all the initiatives towards this direction. However, all these initiatives should not be misread. And sometimes this happens, Firstly, the initiatives should not be taken to mean that, all the responsibility is shifted towards the management, because everyone in an organization should be responsible and accountable, not just management. These initiatives are there, though, to hold the decision makers more accountable. But all of us still have responsibility and will and should be held accountable for our actions. And we should be careful with all these initiatives. It seems that there is an increasing focus on personal liability, on organizations management, and more importantly, the money laundering compliance officer, however you want to call that person around the world. Regulators seem more focused nowadays on who's to blame rather than what is to blame. And unfortunately, changes in legislation and the requirements to comply have also brought with them a considerable amount of fear. And that fear is fear of being liable, fear of being fined. The risk to be liable may induce companies and individuals in those companies to overshoot and be extra cautious. For example, by reporting as many cases as possible as being suspicious, defensive reporting. Doing that could mean that one specific real special case could be lost among the many wrongly reported cases. And also fear could lead to competent and talented people, compliance professionals, moving their way out of the industry. There was a survey a few years ago. The results were that some top-level positions now are difficult to fill, as most people think that no paycheck could match the risk of going to jail. So whilst I welcome all these initiatives, we should really be careful and interpret them the right way.
Maybe I need to rethink my theory of handcuffs for really, as I've been a big proponent of handcuffs. But you made some excellent points there.
Sometimes we need them.
Just 2 last questions. Is training an important component of the culture of compliance?
Well, as you know, I love training. And I believe that anyone should take the time out of their busy schedule and do their training. I have this philosophy: if you stop learning, you die. Well, it's not mine, it's Albert Einstein, but I totally live by that.
Gregory Dellas, Albert Einstein, can't tell the difference.
What's the difference? I don't believe training at work is a waste of time. Some people actually think that. I think that if training is done properly and if training is well planned, it can really change the way people think, and it can really play a big part on how the culture of an institution develops. Training can be used as a tool for management to embed compliance culture, in the sense that it is important for senior management to be involved, to attend trainings, to support trainings, to take part in trainings, showing the right amount of commitment. Training should be tailor-made to the person, not just the institution. So we should really be careful also when we choose who to do our trainings with. The trainers should be knowledgeable, but at the same time should be fun to follow, and the training should be practical. When I conduct some trainings, I always think backwards, so what is the takeaway? What is that something I want to give to people that will make them better, more efficient, more effective in their job tomorrow? There needs to be a practical takeaway. People are too tired of just learning about regulations, about responsibilities, about fines. They need to come out of a training session and be able to say, I learned something today. I can actually use this.
I've often thought that. I see too many times trainers, and you and I have been to gazillions of seminars together over the years. I just don't understand why you get up there, stick your head in your notes, and speak into the podium for an hour, and the whole audience slipped into a coma 10 minutes after you started. I don't see what good it is. If you're not walking off the stage or in front of the class and people have learned something, then you're a failure. The whole idea of training is to train. The audience has to learn something. So I'm a big proponent of that. I don't care if you got to dress up in a clown outfit and strum a banjo, but if the people that walk out there and they learned how to do this AML stuff, then that was a successful training session.
Exactly. Because we've all been through this, crazy long reading the AML directives or the laws or the BSA from your slides. People can do this by themselves. Obviously, it doesn't have to be training in a classroom. It can be what I do here. I send people some mail shots with some case studies. We have a meeting. I might tell them a couple of things they need to watch out. Some quizzes. There's lots of things you can do that will keep people in the right direction, but it obviously needs to be well planned.
And how many times have you and I both been to a zillion different seminars, and and I don't want to put words into your mouth, I know I have. I've learned more in the hallways, stopping and talking to people and chewing the fat with them, or having lunch with them, or at the bar afterwards, than I have sitting in some of the classrooms. And I said, maybe that's a technique I got to figure out how we can, I think they call it open space technology, doing something like that. Think about it, even with the police department. I think we learned more when we had golf outings.
If you get people engaged, that's when they listen, right? If people are disengaged and they're playing on their phone and fiddling with this, that doesn't give them anything.
Yeah. All right, final question. Is there anything that you want to add, or anything that I have not asked you that you want to comment on?
No, I think you've done a great job. Lots of great questions out there. It's always fun doing this with you. We always have good conversations, and we could be doing this for hours. I want to thank you for it. It was a really good opportunity to catch up, and I hope it's been useful to you. It has been useful to me.
Let's hope it's useful to some of the folks out there. And we're going to put this out on my podcast, and also we'll do a video of it and put it up on the YouTube channel so people can dial in and check it out. And hopefully, like you just said, people get something out of it. They learn something. If they learn one thing out of this, then we were a success. And if they learn two things out of it, we ain't getting paid enough for this.
Yeah, I agree, my friend.
All right. Greg, thanks for coming today. I appreciate your time and certainly your expertise.
It's a pleasure, Kevin.
So until we meet again, which will be soon, I know. Thanks for everything. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Have a good one.
Take care. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
This has been Kevin Sullivan of the Anti-Money Laundering Training Academy at AMLtrainer.com. And that wraps up this episode of C Notes. Be on the lookout for the next episode of C Notes. And if you'd like to climb aboard for an AML ride-along, please subscribe to the C Notes podcast. For those watching the video, click the Anti-Money Laundering Training Academy logo in the bottom right of the screen to subscribe to the Anti-Money Laundering Training Academy's YouTube channel and pick up a copy of my book called Anti-Money Laundering in a Nutshell. It's available on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or A-Press or at finer stores in most cities and at lousier stores in all cities. For all your AML advisory services, custom on-site or online training, and a growing catalog of live and on-demand webinar courses, please visit our website at amltrainer.com. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.